There are friends of ours who never ever shun. They're too smart and too dumb at the same time to get involved with shunning their best friend. And that's what we thought we'd talk about this week. Because if you've left the organization and if you've been shunned by your family and suddenly find yourself, going home to yourself, some people are going home to their pet. Those guys don't get involved in all this the culty nonsense that humans do.
Thank goodness.
Thank goodness. And you had, when you left the organization, you had Baxter.
I did. So I've always been a dog person. I like cats, but I'm super allergic. So that's no go for foul.
Oh,
But yeah, when I left, I I had my this little dog. His name's Baxter, and he's a Lhasa Apso. And he was so funny. He just had the funniest little personality. And honestly, I don't know how I would have got through that like transition or that season of life without him because I was going through a divorce. I was moving. I kind of already knew that like the truth wasn't the truth. And,
yeah.
um, I mean, I had lots of friends, but they were all JW friends. Well, they're obviously not going to, let me unload my spiritual burden to them without like branding me an apostate. So Baxter learned plenty about the JW organization because I I told him everything. He just was all ears, and he never got tired of listening, and he never, tried to brainwash me or convince me to stay. So man, I'm thankful. I'm thankful that I had him when I needed him.
Yeah. Yeah, a similar experience. I had my little bulldog Huckleberry, who and I would go. I just realized it was all nonsense. Also had was just pretty deep into a divorce. Wasn't in any other relationship. Was just by myself. I'd come home to my house by myself, and had a little dog that was my buddy, and that had a lot of value. That unconditional love that humans have not, you know, always mastered at all, and that had a lot of value to me. I don't it it was just a stabilizing effect. And maybe
Mm,
you're not an animal or a dog person or a cat person, but for us it was, I think it. I don't even know really. You can probably tell I'm a little bit scattered because
it's
sweater.
fresh.
It is fresh. It was Monday that so from when we're recording, this was 2 days ago that I had to let him go. So, but when you do that, it kind of makes you feel fresh to all the other stuff that was traumatic at the time.
Yeah, that safety blanket was yanked away.
Hmm. And thank
And
goodness I have a family at home to come home to now,
yeah,
and I
oh
have
yeah.
you, it's great to have so much more stability, but it's jarring at first, not just because you've lost a pet, but because you've lost your stability, like you said, your safety blanket. That's the stabilizing factor when stuff was so chaotic.
Yeah. So when my first husband and I were going our separate ways, I remember one time I was talking to him on the phone and we were trying to, work out who was going to keep what possessions or whatever.
Mhm.
And I remember he said, do you want this furniture? And I was like, yeah, I said, I do. We had like, a couple of different sets of furniture. And I said, yeah, I'll take this one and you can keep the other one. And he's like, yeah, that's fine. You can take it. He's like, but you're going to leave Baxter. I'm sorry. No, you can keep all the furniture, all of it, but I'm taking my dog. And I did.
Yeah.
And I had him for like 13 years. I mean, a long time. And then even like years later when Keith and I started dating, one day we were just joking about breaking up and he's like, "You know that if this doesn't work out, Baxter stays." And I said, "You're on drugs if you think that's happening." He's like, "Well, I mean, I hope obviously that it works out and it's, like a moot point, but I'm just letting you know, Baxter, that's the coolest dog ever. Like he's not going anywhere." So Baxter was in high demand.
Yeah.
And I always said, like jokingly, but like halfway joking, that when the time came and, we had to let him go, that I hope I could just find somebody that could dig his grave like bigger, because I said I'm going to want to just crawl right in there. I mean, honestly, like he moved with me from state to state. I first got him in Florida. He came to Pennsylvania. He came to West Virginia. Like he just has been everywhere. He's been to Florida a couple of times, even though that's where he started. And he's just cool. He's just along for the ride, and he just asked so little of you. Just your love. That's enough. Didn't care about my belief system or difference of opinion. Like just our bond was enough. And that was a nice comforting little reminder that that's how it's supposed to be.
It is. It is that a comforting reminder of that. It's just people make things so damn complicated.
Oh, humans, you're the
Oh my
worst.
goodness. I don't know
Did I
what.
hear did I hear a smoke detector chirp?
Uh, you know, that would be a tennis shoe. I think it was what it was.
Okay. I was like,
No, no, I'm not one of
you really
those.
do never go back.
Mm-mm. No, mine are all little digital ones that are connected to a network.
Okay. It must have been a squeaky shoe, because I'm like, there's no way, bro.
There's no way. You need to rethink a friendship. If you are friends with somebody who has a smoke alarm chirping every 30 seconds in the background.
That's not a mentally well person. Like there's something going on. That's
Do
the
you not hear that?
calling card of a serial killer. Like, no.
Seriously. All right, guys, comment if how many of you have friends who have, or are you the friend that has a chirp? Of course, they probably don't know if they're the friend. They probably don't even hear it.
Yeah, blink twice if
Yeah.
it's you.
That doesn't help. I, I, I guess what we want to talk about today was really just that. It is a great deal of loss, and when you lose someone that saw you through that kind of period, it is tough. I think it's a common experience, probably. I don't know, think I've
Yeah.
ever heard any other channel talk about it.
No, and I when you first brought it up, the more I thought about it, I'm like, yeah, that does kind of strike a chord, because for a lot of people who are disconnected from their physical family, you do really pour your emotions into your cat, dog, hamster, horse, or whatever your pet of choice is.
Yeah,
You do really, I think, like maybe bond deeper than just the average like house cat or whatever. Um, because you're still you, and you have a lot of love to share, and so suddenly you may not be getting those regular phone calls where you're chatting with your sibling or whatever. So I feel like you probably do have a little deeper bond with your pet. But the other thing that it made me think of, um, when JWs experience like a loss of a family member, and I've mentioned this on the channel before, they they put like almost limitations on your grief. When my younger brother passed away, I remember an elder stopping by our house, and it was like a few days afterwards. And he was talking with my dad, and I was just in the same room with them, but I wasn't directly involved in their conversation, but I could hear everything that he was saying. And
right.
he mentioned to my dad that it was important to grieve modestly. And I just thought that was like the most offensive thing. And I know what he meant. Um, the scripture that talks about, not making a display as those who have no hope. I know what he meant, but the way he said it was so, it just, I don't know, it hit me wrong. And of
Yeah,
course I was in a very, like raw emotional place.
sure.
But anyway, they do talk about like, grieving modestly, and not making a big, I don't know how to say it, not making a big deal out of something, not going over the top with your emotions, keeping
Right.
yourself in check, I guess is maybe the right way to say it. So, uh, and they always stress that, when someone dies, that's a chance to give a witness to the community, or a witness to non-believing family members, or, you can use their death as like a stepping stone into, you know, witnessing to someone
Right.
else. And when you're speaking only for myself, when I'm sad, I just want to be sad. I don't want to use it as leverage for someone else. I don't want to, turn it into like a show, like to
Right.
sign people up. When someone dies, it is sad. It's meant to be sad.
Hmm.
Um,
It's part of the process.
so yeah, when Baxter, we had to put him to sleep. He was so old and he was in like heart failure. So when we let him go, it was almost like I got to grieve in a way that I never could as a JW. I could just be super sad and super upset, and it didn't matter how long I cried. And if a day passed, or a week passed, or a month passed, and I was still really upset and really sad about it, that was okay. I wasn't going to use, my little dog's funeral, or, we didn't have a funeral, but, I wasn't going to use his little passing to try to influence someone else's emotions or, bring somebody over to my way of thinking. I could just be normal sad, and that's
Hmm.
all. And that was almost like a relief in a way.
Yeah, it's something that well, I have a clip I want to share. We'll put it at the end of this, but it was I noticed that Jehovah's Witnesses kind of do the same thing with grief that maybe somebody else would. They would use alcohol or drugs or something else to hijack the process because I don't feel good right now. This is an uncomfortable feeling. I can't sit with this and I can't experience it. So what I'm going to do with, if your family member, oh, well, not that big of a deal. My, Jerry is going to be resurrected. And so this is just like he's asleep and we shouldn't get that upset about it. And of
Yeah.
course, that doesn't ever come, their promises never come true. But they do that thing that of substituting something to distract themselves from it. And then you
Yeah.
don't, you never really go through the grieving process in a healthy way. And so I'm going to share a clip at the end of this. So hang on, and we'll show that later after we're done here with our conversation. But it's uh, an actor. It's an old clip. It's Jimmy Stewart, and he writes a poem about his dog. And when you're watching it, and this is, first of all, how much late night. Can you imagine? He's on Johnny Carson. Can you imagine going on Jimmy Fallon and reading a poem about your dog? I mean, that's not going to happen now, but it's so interesting how much culture has changed.
Oh
But
yeah.
what I liked about this dude, who is one of the Hollywood actors, old Hollywood, I really admired. He's really a cool guy. Served in World War II, was just married to the same woman for over a half a century. They were such close friends, and the way he's dealing with the grief of the loss of his dog, if you watch it, you notice he's actually facing it and actually processing it, and it's such not only a beautiful thing, but I think it's also an excellent standard to follow. It's just so much more healthy than doing all the ridiculous mental stuff JWs do to themselves, or doing all the stuff that a lot of us humans, just with or without a cult, do is try
Yeah.
to avoid it and not sit with it, and that's just not the way to go.
Not
It's
healthy. It'll rear its ugly head.
it'll
That
get you
grief that you never got to work through, for sure.
right. Like when I first left the organization and I was going through a divorce, I've said this on the channel before, really heavily self-medicated with alcohol. All that did, yes, it made me feel better on those nights for the first few drinks, but
Sure.
afterward, all it did was delay the grieving process of all the loss because I wasn't sitting with it.
I'm gonna look up real quick this quote.
So this has been an experience actually sitting with it. I've never had a pet from beginning to end like that. We went and Rebecca and I picked him out when he was 6 weeks old, and he was biting his brothers so much that the lady said, "Oh my goodness, he's beating his brothers up so bad, his litter mates. Please take him." Even though it's a little early, he's not nursing anymore. He's just such a little enthusiastic guy. and which is a nice way of saying asshole. And and he continued to be that way.
Rambunctious.
Yeah, there he is.
Yeah, when they say he's a rambunctious
He's a
puppy, that just
rascal.
means he's a little Tasmanian devil. He's
Yeah.
a terror. That's what you're adopting, a little devil.
Exactly. And so I picked him up, and he was an absolute peach and lived 13 years. And according to the calculator, I think it was 7 months. So he lived a long run and saw me through all that, and leaving the cult and being shunned and all that stuff. So it worked. It was an excellent experience, and I'm very glad that I had it. But now it kind of led us to this conversation about actually dealing with grief instead of avoiding it like Jehovah's Witnesses do.
So there was a episode not too long ago of Sesame Street. I'm not a big Sesame Street watcher, but this random clip of it popped up in one of my like social media feeds,
Hmm.
and it was Andrew Garfield from like the Spider-Man movies, and he's talking to Elmo, and they're talking about grief. And Sesame Street is a great show that actually does tackle like some deeper like emotional topics even for children, death of a parent or parents that are incarcerated or things like that.
Yeah.
So in this one scene, he's talking to Elmo like out on the stoop, and he's talking about, this is probably going to make me emotional. He's talking about grief, and his mom passed away. And so in the little scene, Elmo's like, "Oh, I'm sorry if that makes you sad or whatever." And he says to Elmo, he says, "Sadness is
It's
a
kind of
kind
a
of gift.
gift. It's
It's a
kind of
kind
a
of
lovely thing
to
to
feel in
in a
a way,
way,
because it means you really
because it
love
means you really
somebody when
loved
you miss
somebody when
them.
you miss them.
When I miss my mom, I remember it's because she made me so happy. So I can celebrate her and I can miss her at the same time." And I just think like that's so beautiful to
Mm.
think of it that way, that even though it does sting and it does hurt, and I miss my mom every day. Um, there is a beauty to it because there was something worth missing. There was something worth making the emotional attachment, even if it meant that eventually it would hurt. So I think that's really nice, whether it's a person or a doggy or whatever.
Yeah, that is real, and that's beautiful. I remember another rather ridiculous cartoon I watched, South Park, which is usually full of just dirty jokes. But there was
Yeah.
one scene where one of the little characters is crying, and he's like, "Why are you crying?
Oh.
Nothing's worth living." And little Butters
The only
says,
way I
"Well,
could feel this sad now is if I felt something really good before. So I have to take the bad with the good. So I guess what I'm feeling is like a beautiful sadness. I
it's
guess that
something
sounds
that
stupid.
I appreciate that I'm alive and I'm experiencing something that's real and alive."
Yeah.
Um, and I remember saying this to my friend Mike. I said after I'd gotten out of a relationship, and he'd seen me go through like three of them, and he's like, "Hmm." And I said, I like being single now. I don't want to get in a relationship because you know, they they cause problems. I either let people down or they let me down or something just terrible happens. I'm
Mhm.
not going to participate in them anymore. And he said, because he's almost 20 years older than me. So it sounds like you're just not participating in life because will it end eventually? Is that what you're saying to me? And I was like, oh
Well, it
yeah.
sounds
Well,
stupid
that's
when you
dumb.
say
That's
it.
stupid. So thanks, Mike. That was good advice to still be involved. And so I am happy that I got a dog. That dog saw me through a period, and now it's over, but it was still worth the journey. The journey. Um,
Yeah.
Sorry. Dead pets kick up my allergies. It's terrible. Um,
Who's cutting onions in here?
I know.
Yeah.
uh,
He'll forever be our mascot. He saw the launch of this project and warmed your feet many, many days during editing. So
yeah.
officially, unofficially,
And you know what? He
Barry's our
he
mascot.
he died very much like he lived, enjoying being in my company and with a little bit of peanut butter in his face. So
It's not a bad combo.
it's not well. Thank you.
I mean,
I
I can think of worse ways to go.
I don't know why he was so latched onto me, but that dude had serious FOMO if I left the room, and it was to the point where his arthritis. He's like, "Oh crap, he's leaving the room. I gotta go follow him."
Come back
I'm
here.
like, "Buddy, just stay. I've got you on
I
twice
promise
the
I'll be back.
painkillers you're supposed to have. You don't need to be following me down the stairs and then back up again in 30 seconds. I'm just getting a soda." But it's yeah, we hope this is at all useful. If you've had a loss, of course, I mean, this is nothing special. It's happening right now all over the earth. But just kind of a reminder to me to, appreciate these things and to appreciate the process, even when it's being really unpleasant.
That's right. So go hug your fur babies extra tight for us. We love you guys.
I just thought I'd write a poem. You want to hear
Please,
it?
oh yes.
You want to hear it? Now this, well,
They could always start the wedding late, I guess.
now the title of it is Bo. That's the name of the dog. He never came to me when I would call unless I had a tennis ball, or he felt like it. But mostly he didn't come at all. When he was young, he never learned to heel or sit or stay. He did things his way. Discipline was not his bag, but when you were with him, things sure didn't drag. He'd dig up a rose bush just to spite me, and when I'd grab him, he'd turn and bite me. He bit lots of folks from day to day. The delivery boy was his favorite prey. The gas man wouldn't read our meter. He said we owned a real man-eater. He set the house on fire, but the story's long to tell. Suffice to say that he survived and the house survived as well. And on evening walks, and Gloria took him, he was always first out the door. The old one and I brought up the rear because our bones were sore. And he'd charge up the street with Mom hanging on. What a beautiful pair they were. And if it was still light and the tourists were out, they created a bit of a stir. But every once in a while, he'd stop in his tracks and with a frown on his face, look around. It was just to make sure that the old one was there to follow him where he was bound. We're early to bedders in our house. I guess I'm the first to retire. And as I'd leave the room, he'd look at me and get up from his place by the fire. He knew where the tennis balls were upstairs, and I'd give him one for a while, and he'd push it under the bed with his nose, and I'd dig it out with a smile. But before very long, he'd tire of the ball, and he'd be asleep in his corner in no time at all. And there were nights when I'd feel him climb upon our bed and lie between us, and I'd pat his head. And there were nights when I'd feel this stare, and I'd wake up and he'd be sitting there, and I'd reach out to stroke his hair, and sometimes I'd feel him sigh, and I think I know the reason why. He'd wake up at night and he would have this fear of the dark, of life, of lots of things. And he'd be glad to have me near. And now he's dead. And there are nights when I think I feel him climb upon our bed and lie between us, and I pat his head. And there are nights when I think I feel that stare, and I reach out my hand to stroke his hair, and he's not there. Oh, how I wish that wasn't so. I'll always love a dog named Bo.
Oh, I've been working on my Vincent Price impression of when Jehovah's Witnesses knock on his door on Saturday
Hit me.
morning. All right, you ready?
Yeah.
Oh, Falon, who could that be at this hour? How was it?
Pretty good.
Yeah, thanks. That's all I have so far. I'll keep working.